A lot of big wins over the weekend in college basketball. One of those belongs to the head coach of the Mississippi State Bulldogs. That's Chris Jans. He is with us as we speak. Coach, thanks for the time as always. I'm here in Memphis, and so I was. And what struck me was just the energy from the jump, just the effort from the jump. And you mentioned the extra time to prep, and it clearly showed. So just how important was that, having a little bit of extra time against a good Memphis team? Your guys looked ready, man.
What's up, guys? How we doing?
Coach, happy holidays.
Right? You got a good Christmas coming, don't you, right now?
Huh?
Yeah.
I
You got a good holiday
coming. I told my wife I was on vacation for 4 days, so this doesn't feel like vacation, she told me. But all good. I said, for these guys, we got to make it happen. Saturday was obviously fun for us. It's not hard to get your guys ready to play when they're playing a ranked team and you get to play in, the Forum. Memphis had some great wins thus far in the season. UConn, Michigan State, what a road trip going to Clemson and Virginia and beating both those programs on their home floor. So if our kids weren't ready to play, Saturday, I knew we were going to have a problem. And fortunately they were. They were juiced up and ready to go. And I mentioned in the post-game media room that, they had a heck of a road trip, had less, 1 day less to prepare, had to fly home that night. We were comfortable at home, preparing ahead of them. Everything was in our favor when it came to that. And I'm sure they had some tired legs as well with just the travel, et cetera. So, we took advantage of it and certainly loved the way our kids came out to play. And other than the last couple of minutes of the game, played very, very well.
Listen, everybody knows about, well, maybe not everybody, but everybody who follows college basketball knows about Josh Hubbard. One of the best, most electric offensive players in the country. But obviously, he's a guy who needed help. And you brought in a couple of guys on this team that certainly Riley Kugel looked great. I mean, that's the best I think I've ever seen him look, to be honest, against Memphis. And, I saw Claudell Harris here not here, I'm in Charleston, but at Boston College. And he can shoot it and he can score. When did you know you had a team here that was more of a team, Jans, rather than, I don't want to say a one-man team last year, but like so much was on Hubbard from the perimeter. Obviously, you had Tolu down low.
Yeah, I think in the summer, you get together in the summer and get to know everybody and, you got limited hours and you certainly at the first part of it anyway, you're doing more individuals. And then as the summer unfolds, you get more of your team stuff. And we just had some moments where we play like a 5-minute game and, the score was much higher than it had been. And I remember going over to a couple of the guys like, am I misremembering? Or like, usually these games were like 8-2, and it was like 16-14, in a 5-minute game. And certainly, it gets you excited about what could be and easier to score the ball. And, the other side of your brain's going, we can't guard anybody. And that was a point of discussion all summer and fall that, I would tell people even in, our local media, like, we're not going to be as good defensively. We're just not. After getting to know them over the summer and the fall, we're not as girthy as we were. We lost some guys that were defensive minded. But you go out in the portal and you get guys like that you mentioned and others that, were more known for their offensive talent. I mean, what do you expect, right? You're not going to be as good defensively, but hopefully you're going to be better offensively. And that's kind of how it's worked out. So myself and the rest of our staff have had to adjust, to that. Our style of play has changed quite a bit. Some local people are like, what about the defense, this, that, and the other? And I tell everybody, I don't really care how we win. I mean, I'm not caught up in, being known as a defensive, minded program or anything like that. I just want to win games. And with where the game is going and where the kids are at, wanting to score and being able to score, Trying to, modernize your offense. It just makes a lot of sense to try to do it that way.
Coach, I had you guys out in Arizona, and you dropped that game to Butler. And I went on a rant yesterday in studio, just like right before the game against Memphis. No offense, John Martin. I know you were in Memphis when I was in studio yesterday, so no offense to you. But just on a rant, like, this team is for real. And I think one of the things that makes your team so good is even going into those games out in Arizona, I think you had started like 7 different starting lineups. So as an opposing coach, trying to figure out who you're starting, how are you going to balance this, who's coming into the game, all things like that. But do you feel like the unselfishness of your team and guys being willing, like a Riley Kugel, to come off the bench and have an impact, is that the strength of this team, Coach?
Yeah, it's a good point. Let's be honest. The reason I changed so many lineups to start the season is I didn't know who to start. We didn't have a lot of separation. I'm not that smart to have a master plan to motivate this or motivate that. I told them before the first game, though, they're like, listen, this is how it's going to work. We're going to change lineups and see how it works. It's going to be for a while. I'm not sure how long. Don't try to read into it too much. The old school approach is, who's in the game when it matters, who's in the game when it's hard, who's at the game when the score's imbalanced toward the end of the game. That tells you, how we feel about you in terms of trust, etc. But we really were trying to figure it out. Certainly, a lot of people are going to critique us. Hey, you got to know who your starters are. You got to know when you're coming off the bench. You got to know, who you're playing with. And I get that part too. And certainly we want to settle in and hopefully we will soon. But, I don't know, it's worked out for us thus far. And, you mentioned a player, Riley or anybody else for that matter, being okay with not starting. I'm not sure if they're okay with it or not. I mean, they haven't said anything to me about it, but, it's been a so far so good situation.
Coach, what's it been like watching this start for the SEC as a whole? Like, are you on one hand pumped because, all right, all these wins are going to matter, and on the other hand, you're like scared to death all these games you're going to play? Like, what's it been like to watch the dominance of this league for the first 2 months?
Yeah, you hit the nail on the head. In October and November, and we're beating the drum like, man, this is going to be awesome. I remember in the summer. I remember sitting around in July, sitting next to a coach that I know well, and I go, the whole SEC's in the gym, and I go, hey, tell me which one of these coaches doesn't think they have a team that's good enough to be in March Madness. And we looked around, I'm like, none of them. Knowing what I knew of who they're coming back, who the coach was, who they had signed in their classes, portal or high school. And I'm like, I would think I was going to the tournament if I had their roster. And I just kept getting I go, and not everybody's going. The musical chairs is game's going to be played, and you don't want to be the one standing, obviously, when the music stops. And I just, all I could think about was that how good it was going to be, at least on paper. And then, fortunately, it's unfolded that way. It's been historic, and I root for them every single night. I love being a small part in it. I'm glad our program's a part of it. But I'm not going to lie to you, right? Ask me in late January how I feel about it. I'm not sure what the answer will be, because there's a lot of great teams and a whole bunch of good teams. There's no bad teams in the SEC this year. There's not one. There's nobody that doesn't think they have a chance to win every single night. So from a quad perspective, which obviously really, really matters, that's cool. It's awesome. It's exciting. But from a winning game perspective, it's pretty daunting. And, if I was y'all, I'd be like, heck yeah, I can't wait to see it unfold. But, from my chair, it's a little intimidating at times.